All right, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Max Rounds 30 podcast where there is no overtime. As usual, I am joined by Coy from MTU Esports, Jeff from Dust2US, and I am Jacob Halfman from UW Whitewater Esports. So in 30 minutes, we will be covering all of this week's ESEA Premier content and various surrounding news. So without further ado, we start the timer. Make sure it's rolling. We're ready to go. And let's get started into our first topic. So we'll kind of start out with our weekly news updates before we get into roster changes. Just a little quick run through. First thing on our list is the Dreamhack Masters quals get announced 5 days before they happen. Jeff, do you have any thoughts on this one?
It's like you don't get presents for Christmas for the 5th year in a row, and you expect nothing, but you're still disappointed, because for every Dreamhack Masters event we have in NA, there's like a 95% chance Dreamhack does this, where they simultaneously schedule the qualifiers on a weekday, meaning most of the teams that don't have salaries can't play them, and then they simultaneously give us no lead-in time for them, so that players can't schedule off of work. And it's like, I would, rail against them and be like, oh, Dreamhack don't care about the NA scene and they're oblivious Swedes and they don't understand how the NA ecosystem works. But like, they've been doing this for years now, so it's inexcusable, but it's also completely expected that they just fuck up another qualifier by sheer incompetence. And we especially know that now that they are working with ESEA, it's like, you and ESEA can figure out how to make this qualifier run in an organized fashion. So like, not surprised, but it's still not like good enough.
Yeah.
It definitely could have been handled better.
Yeah, Dreamhack. It could have been handled better. All right. Moving on from that.
You're on notice again.
we'll touch on the we got some top 30 HLTV ranking updates, as well as I suppose ESL ranking updates. Extra Salt break into the top 30, so they're at number 28 after all of the I believe that's DreamHack Open and then Cash Cup.
Cash Cups, yeah, that's and ESEA Premier, which should give a small bump in points.
And then Bad News Bears finally get some respect. They're up to 36. They're not quite in the top 30, but they're getting close. Maybe we'll see them peak up again when they can finally compete in another Cash Cup. So
I feel the only way they get enough points to do that is that they have to do really good at DreamHack Open March. They have to like top 4, because while there is NA point inflation for competing in NA events, I don't think they can be inflated that much where they can break in the top 30, especially as the EU season's picking up steam, so all the EU teams will be getting points. So it's mostly a symbolic gesture, but they need to do like really good if they want to get like the arbitrary award of being in HLTV's top 30.
Yeah, where are they? I know they fixed and they added the previous Cash Cup, since Note kind of went on a thing about it and kicked some butt. Did we see where they ended up after those? Let's see here. Coy, do you have any thoughts on this while I try to hunt through ESL's website for this?
I'm really happy to see that Extra Salt's actually getting the respect that they deserve, I feel, and something that we're going to touch on later regarding the roster changes, I think is only going to like potentially help with maintain that consistency.
So okay, I didn't even realize this, but they're sitting at 19 currently on ESL.
That's a bit generous.
They're above NIP, which is
and Fnatic and Amiga
and Extra Salt. Okay, yeah, okay. ESL still got to work on that one a little bit, but
it could be better.
They've never been really good at the whole like math
ranking
thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. 19's very generous, and it's probably not representative of reality, unfortunately. Like, I think 36 in the world is much more representative of what we could say is like an objective reality.
They're trying to make MCE happy, so he doesn't come and beat them up.
Yeah, they don't. So right. I think there's enough to, there's not really anything more we can say about that besides ESL's rankings are still struggling to be accurate. So I think we'll just move straight away into roster changes, and the big news story that we missed last week while filming because it had broke just as we started to film was Marky replacing Modem on Extra Salt. And I know, Koi, you had some interest in this move. Do you think you can break it down for us?
Yeah, so the big thing with Extra Salt is that they recently, like, while they're winning the events that they like kind of should, it's very close, right? And it's very streaky, the performances from the team. And so, MOTM is like one of those players that, the team, kind of lives or dies by his individual performance. And so if he can be consistent, then the team's consistent. But unfortunately, that's not like always happening. So Marky coming in and filling his spot while, Modem's a very talented rifler, Marky's just a lot more consistent. So I think it's going to work out in the long run.
I feel like he's a selfless entry frag, but if you just need like more firepower, Marky sort of fills that role. And I mean, since he's been on the team, he's been red hot. Do you think this is the right player to remove? I know you have a certain. I know you.
So
you guys have a certain degree of animosity towards Sonic and his role in this team. Like, can we discuss that?
I think it should have been Sonic just because the ways that the roles play out. I think that Marky would have had more impact in Sonic's roles than Modem. But I mean, then at that point you're kind of losing the South African core that you made the team around in the first place, and potentially that would play into like the fans and stuff like that. So that becomes a little bit more.
I don't think it's a bit because I don't think Extra Salt didn't sign this roster to be like a South African lineup. I think they just signed it to be a good lineup, and I don't know. I feel like double op is pretty rare to see. In World Counter-Strike these days. Like I'm not out on Sonic, and unfortunately, like I don't know. I think it could have gone either way, but the Marquee edition is definitely a positive.
True, it's ultimately going to be beneficial.
You'd have to say like if they start playing better teams that can deprive them of resources, and Sonic isn't able to deliver when like the economy is tight, maybe he's your next consideration. But as we've seen, like they don't need to really worry about that for right now because since signing Marquee, as far as they've only lost a single map, so it's like they've just been smashing through NA teams right now, and they haven't rub up against like the top level NA teams like Liquid or Team One's been on a European sabbatical, so we don't really see them that much anymore. And so for now it's just working for them. Like they can easily beat most NA teams. So
here's my question though. So like it almost seems to me like it's a little bit of a maybe with the way that Modem is like it can be either with that inconsistency, maybe they decided on Modem simply because then like you're not necessarily the skill like the overall ceiling for that roster then probably is like maybe lowered a little bit if they didn't swap Marky for Sonic, but maybe that the low like the floor for performance is raised.
The floor definitely gets raised because you get rid of MOTM, who's relatively inconsistent, and you just add Marky, who like he's just consistently good, and he's been consistently good for like almost 2 years now.
God, Marky.
Exactly. He just does his job really well.
So I mean, overall, I think we're all in agreement. It's a positive move. Yeah. Maybe not the person some of you would have liked to see remove, but like I think Sonic has more to show on this roster, so I'm happy they didn't make a knee-jerk reaction. My only concern is I don't really see where Modem goes now.
Like, well, they were saying maybe 6-man was like the hint.
Well, that was their initial marketing material approach towards the team, but I don't really feel like a 6-man roster is reflected. I don't think any NA team can really float that right now.
Well, especially with Valve not allowing players switches between maps.
Not that the RMR really matters these days, but I don't know. I don't see it as something that they're particularly interested in. But like I don't see. Let's say like contracts are off the table. Where would you like to see Modem go?
Oh,
tough, right? Like, there's nowhere.
That's really tough. I feel as though he would be like potentially, an upgrade or like some sort of like swap with like maybe High Coast or something, or something like that. But I don't actually.
If they want more experience, I could see like just making like a replacing Sixy or Viz on Triumph. Just like the roles aren't really analogous, but just have a more experienced player in the lineup. And you could probably do the same with Bad News Bears, replace Alter with MOTM, which would be a brutal cut because Alter's done nothing wrong in that team so far.
Mhm.
But I mean, like that's just me spitballing based on teams who would maybe want more experienced players. But yeah, I do think like High Coast and Triumph make the most sense because those are teams that have had very inconsistent performances and who are maybe looking at roster changes as we approach playoffs and as we approach DreamHack. I don't know. I feel like we'll know once DreamHack Open March is done if those rosters are, if they're fit for purpose.
And
Yeah,
also those
especially-
rosters. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, especially as we approach the roster lock, seeing as the roster lock is this Sunday at midnight UTC. So whatever
Yeah,
these teams are going to do, they're running out of time to do it.
I don't think we see any changes during season 36 just because I don't know. I feel like with the way the format's more brutal now, I feel like teams are going to be more reluctant to try to integrate someone, especially because there's only 4 playoff spots in each group. But like season 37, we could see a big shift in some of those like sub-top NA teams. Let's keep moving on. Speaking of moving on from sub-top NA teams to sub-bottom NA teams, we have Maui Snake and Fluky coming into previously known as taller than 5'4", now known as the Commission. Is there any thoughts on this roster? For people who don't know, it's Braun, Minus, Micro, and now Maui Snake and Fluky.
It'll be really interesting to see how Fluky plays into this roster because previously he got removed from Third Impact for I think
in
they said
rapid fashion.
Yeah, for lack of experience and
team
game
chemistry and
a bunch of different reasons. But I mean that roster, I think has hope. It has legs to it, especially with someone like Maui Snake potentially coming in. But I'm not. It feels like a little bit, too little, too late.
I feel like it's not really a season 36 lineup. It's a season 37 lineup. But then again, at the same time, Maui Snake could just dip at any second if his casting schedule, if his death schedule gets more busy. But the only thing, I don't think this team is going to do anything of particular note. So the only thing I'm looking at is to see if Fluky has developed as a player since we last saw him in Premiere. And because, people regarded him as a skilled player, it was just the tangential stuff that ruined it for him. So I think that's the one thing you need to just look at with this roster. Has Fluky improved? What do we think of him? What can he do from here? Next move we have on the table is Oceanus they removed Castro and KMZ for sort of mixed reasons, mixture of stepping down, mixture of cut. It's one of those moves which is muddy in terms of what people say. I don't really know what to say about this team because it's one of those ones that doesn't they're liable for an upset on a good day, but then there's a lot of suspicious things floating in the air in terms of their
the whole lineup. Yeah.
The whole lineup, the Vec Twit longer, the future of the team. I'm not thoughts on this?
Well, with the stand-ins that they have right now, seeing as they have Insaniac and Melee, unofficially correct. Well, they stood in for DreamHack Open for the qual, and they kind of got blasted by Extra Salt.
It's worth noting that the match they got blasted on was they used KMZ and Castro as stand-ins.
Oh, was that KMZ and Castro for stand-in?
Yeah, because they.
Oh, okay.
It's just I don't know. I think it was KMZ, Castro, and then they used Melee maybe. My understanding is Inshaniac and Melio had exam conflicts, so they basically just had to use two almost completely different rosters for the 2 matches. So I don't think you can really look into that much. But I don't know. I don't really have expectations for this roster to do good or really. I don't know. They're one of the have-not teams I feel like right now. So I'm just content with saying hopefully they find 2 new good players, but I don't know if it really means anything.
Are they going to find 2 good players before
Sunday? The roster lock? Yeah, which you'd think they would just default to Melee and Inshaniac because those are the players that they know and they've been playing with. But you really never know.
They're teetering on the edge of playoffs right now, aren't they? Because they're sitting at 3-2 right now.
Are they in Group A?
I'd have to double check. You'll have to double check on that.
I'll check. You keep.
Okay,
I'll get back to you on that. Do you want to move on to our next roster change?
Yeah, sure. Do you have anything on the Oceanus moves before we scoot on?
Not a ton, no.
All right. So next up we have GGPR and Excellent Dust 2 Puns as GDPR cut Creed.
Just to interject real quick, they're in Group A, and Group A is highly competitive. Like 2 spots are already locked in, so I don't think they're going to make playoffs.
Yeah, I don't think so. If that's where they're at, they're 3-2 right now. They're removing players. They've got 1 week to solidify all 5.
Yeah. So nothing there. GDPR cut Creed,
and welcome Poison with Arms Wide Open. Okay, a lot of that joke apparently flew over more people's head than I thought, but I thought that was excellent. If anybody knows the band Creed, but I don't know. How do we feel about that move?
Creed was one of their better players, if not their best player on that team, and the logic on why he was cut, like what Lowrider quoted as saying, was that he wasn't committing enough time. But that sort of feels like a weird reason. Like, you wouldn't cut your best player for not being committed enough if he gets you the results you want. And I don't think Poison really stacks up to Creed. It's like, I don't really understand this roster move. Like, I don't feel like this is something that he had to do to prove a point that I demand my players practice more. When by all metrics, GDPR have been doing very well as a team. Like, they're performing above my expectations this season, and I hate to see them lose another key piece of their lineup over petty politics.
Right, especially after their bounce back from all of the roster issues they had at the beginning of the season. It just doesn't make any sense.
It just feels like another knee-jerk reaction to some perceived issue that I don't really know is accurate. It doesn't do it for me as a good reason to cut someone.
Yeah. Koi, do you have any thoughts on this one?
My big thought here is that Poison, while I'd like to see a bunch of results happen, he's a pretty unproven player, and it seems like there's way more behind the scenes that we're not aware of as to why that was the selection made and why they ultimately cut Creed. So I don't really have a whole lot more to say about that until we see results of that roster coming in.
Yeah. All right. Well, if we don't have anything else on that, it's just it's definitely just such a weird cut, especially because they're they said inactive. I believe it was just what they were just saying it was a matter of oh, you aren't putting enough hours
into pugging. Yeah.
It's just that doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw 3 moves at you guys shotgun style before we get to the big one of this week. If anyone has anything they want to say about SKDC versus Rise, Caber, or SKDC add Rise, Caber joins Rise, and Imperium minus J-Dubs speak now or forever hold your peace.
I mean, Caber going to Rise kind of makes sense. They have the chemistry, they have the history. It's a good move overall, and I think it's working out in their favor. In the grand scheme of things.
He's been playing, so we know it's working.
Exactly, he's playing well. They're playing well. They're exceeding my expectations for sure. So I think it's ultimately going to be beneficial.
So
J-Dubs leaving Imperium is a little bit of a unfortunate twist there, just because J-Dubs was one of their best players. But with that roster, you can never really be sure.
I get why he wanted to get out of there while he still could before the roster lock hit. Even if he doesn't find a new team, he may as well go down to advance and just ply his trade. Maybe try to find a playoff spot who needs a 5th or just even a backup player. So bad move overall. Doesn't really make sense. Doesn't move them in the right direction. Yeah. And then Rise SKDC I think is kind of just a pointless move. Rise is a serviceable player, but that team has been in just a terminal nosedive for most of the season. So it's I don't think they have a default win. Yeah, thanks. I think that's a team where it's if you put Rise in the captain's chair and he pulls up on the stick, I think it still crashes into the mountain.
It's probably something to I don't know. It's a weird late move that will we don't know if it's going to benefit anything there. As far as Imperium and J-Dubs go, it's just it raises questions, I think, as far as what's going on the inside of Imperium. They started to look kind of promising. We had the little it's only up from here thing kind of going on, and they showed promise in a lot of matchups, but it wasn't anything to get them across the line, right? So
show's over, go home, no refunds. Exactly.
Yeah, it's anticlimactic, and it's not what I wanted to see out of that roster, which is kind of unfortunate. So But with
Speaking of unfortunate, yeah, I think you're gonna
Segueing us
you're gonna
here.
bring this one up, like.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
segueing that, Secret Club is having some problems. So first cut was axed. So
Mhm.
axed got removed, and then we'll just kind of push into this here before we come back for reactions. But after axed, it was they removed Frosty
And
and
Clasia
Clasia,
at 2 a.m, like late at night.
and that was the day after a match, wasn't it? Or was
No,
that the night
that was
after?
this weekend.
That was the
They
weekend.
they
Okay.
cut Axe, and then like 15 hours later, Clasia and Frosty K were sent packing in a very dramatic fashion. And I can corroborate this because I asked Clasia if he knew why he had been cut, and he told me that I told him he had been cut. And when you have a journalist coming to you saying, "Hey, are you aware you've been cut?" And the answer is no, I am not aware I have been cut from my team. That usually means it wasn't like, let's all sit down in the beanbag chairs and smoke the peace pipe and decide who we want to cut. That says the leader of the roster is like throwing your clothes out the window and telling you to fuck off. Like
Yeah.
this is not a happy marriage of the secret club camp.
I have no idea what's necessarily going on there, and it's
Yeah,
like they were such a promising roster to me personally. Like I thought that they were doing really well, and I thought that they had a chance to really like take some very important wins in like playoffs and stuff like that. But now, especially with roster lock this close, like
well, so
what's
they
What
added
did they do?
Slate back, which like I'm
yeah,
fine with Slate. Like I'm down with
for
Slate.
sure.
Like I think he's fine. Like I would say Frosty K was an upgrade, but this isn't like a huge downgrade. But you hear this whole thing that like Kaiza is running around saying like Wolfy's essentially like lost the plot, and he's like he's committing like a Stalinist style purge of everyone who he thought was trying to like the coup the central government, and
Yeah.
it makes you like wonder like where the team's mindset is at now that he's like so Vic Jenner, you guys won't betray me, right? Like he's like, I'd hate to see you betray me like a week before roster lock, like because
Yeah.
like like that's lingering in the back of his mind. That's like, oh, like Axton Jitter or Vic and Jitter have seen me like lost the plot, so maybe they actually do think about mutinying me now, which is something I'm already like thinking is true, which it probably isn't.
Which
So like,
even with that, like they can like that's mutinying doesn't even like that wouldn't even prevent it, would it? Like that's not even how that works, right?
well, no, the mutiny could be used to cut Wolfy and basically bring everyone back in, but
Yeah.
like that's not going to happen realistically. But
Yeah.
it could happen realistically. Like that doesn't bode well for the team's environment. And when you like look at this on paper, it's not a huge it's not a catastrophic failure because Axe I would say is more of like a motivational coach than a technical coach, and then you have Frosty K who's a serviceable player but he's not like a star player, and you have Clasia who's who could be a star player but he's not. He comes with his baggage of being inexperienced, and you bring back Slight who's a serviceable player. Like the plus and minus on the personnel side like isn't like doom and gloom, but all the shit around it makes you go like, what the fuck is going on in
Yeah.
Secret Club? So like that's what I'm concerned about. Is this team like I still want to like them and I still want them to do well, but it's like Wolfy, man, like
Yeah, and that all came just like after plumbing out of Dreamhack Open too. So like
yeah, it's like well, it's like Wolfy, man, like your team's been doing like amazing considering you're all playing for free and you have 3 young players. Like just chill out and maybe chill out. Ideally, I'd want to see them like all make amends and just bring the boys back in, but that's not going to happen.
Is that going to happen? Yeah, is that realistic at this point? Especially with like Axe saying on Twitter, like there's a lot of like alleged stuff right now that Wolfy was apparently on like 400 milligrams of caffeine or something, which is like, well, within our own crew, we're debating if that's even a lot, but that's just Cole
apparently
speaking,
it's a lot for him. Like I would
Yeah.
say like when I heard, like the rumors I heard circulating is like that might be like a lot for him because apparently he's a very like clean living guy, and he goes from clean living to like Miami Vice
Injected
overnight.
into my veins.
Like he's like He's like, what? He's like, what? No, I just take this ketamine to relax before premiere matches. Like, it's like, I don't know. I think we need to move on from this if we're going to cover everything else in the show. But like, we all agree this is like a negative move, and it's like
Yeah.
it's a negative move, and it's a concerning move for the future of Secret Club as a coherent lineup. Like,
Definitely. All right. So, okay, moving on. Now that we've got, Secret Club is going into a little bit of a nosedive. We're not sure what's quite going on over there, but we'll kind of see how that kind of finishes up for the roster locks. We got some match recaps to run through. I'm going to shotgun through these. I'm going to hop around and get some thoughts based on what matches, see if we have any actual interesting things to talk about. But this will be starting with DreamHack Open March. So Extra Salt and RBG qualify. Any crazy thoughts? Yeah, my only thought with this is that Recon 5 losing the RBG was kind of unexpected for me personally.
I'm fine with it just because it really just shows that RBG is putting in the work, and now they're like reaping the rewards from working so hard to like really legitimize themselves as a team. And
that team
beating Recon 5 really just cemented that for me.
That team is like the good boys club of like NACS, where it's like they just do no wrong, and they just ply their craft, and they just like everything's like great for them, and they just win matches, and then they're all like, "Great playing with you, pal." Like it's like so, it's like I love you, Hex. Like it's not like indicative of like it's so different from the regular NA experience. Like I'm always happy for them to win. And that's like my main takeaway for that.
All right. So then also we have the invites. So the invites are Bad News Bears, High Coast, and then we have Pain, Rebirth, Triumph, and then Liquid. So I guess they're going to somehow make that work because they've accepted the invite. I guess they are going to come back to NA and do DreamHack Open and then...
Or go back to Europe for Pro League. Yeah.
Don't ask me how that's going to work, but that's just... whatever. All right.
They solved it by having more money than us. They solved the travel ban by having money. I think the only takeaway you can look at those invites is it's basically the NA gang plus Liquid, and the only like expectation you can have for this event is Liquid just smashes every other team, wins the money, laughs, and goes back to Europe. If they lose this event, you're just like, what the fuck, like Liquid, like
it just
like that's like
makes no sense.
That'd be like peak Chokewood is they get top 4 at the best event we've had in like 16 months, and then they go to DreamHack Open and they lose to like I don't know, like Extra Salt or something. Like it's unfathomable, and that's like the only thing you can look towards for this event is Liquid wins. Anything else is just insanity.
All right, so we're at the 3-minute mark, so we are going to zoom through some ESEA Premier Week 5 match recaps. So on Tuesday, we had Bad News Bear 2-0 Eclipse, 16-4 on Nuke, 16-2 on Train. I don't think we have anything crazy on that. All right, so High Coast took Imperium down 2-0, another not very close, 16-9 Mirage, 16-6 on Overpass. And I'm looking for head shakes or nods. Looks like we got some...
No sauce. No sauce there.
Nope.
All right, no sauce there. All right, so we'll go by the head shake and nod system for the rest of these. So Recon 5, 2-0 RBG. That was a 19-17 on Mirage and a 16-13 on Inferno. So that one was a relatively close match.
The rivalry is hot.
All right, rivalry hot. All right, so next up we had Mythic 2-1 GGPR. That was 16-7 on Vertigo, Mythic, and then 16-12 on Dust 2. That was GGPR, and then Mythic took Nuke 16-10, which it's a good win for Mythic in my opinion. Nothing crazy on the thoughts there. All right, so moving on to the next one. Since we're just going to kind of speed through these, we're running out of time. Extra Salt 2-1 over Rise. Extra Salt took Overpass 16-6, and Rise took Inferno 16-11, which is I think a really good thing from Rise. And then 16-2 on Nuke was Extra Salt. So Triumph 2-1 over Third Impact. We're going to start skipping maps because we kind of budgeted at the end of our show a little bit poorly here, and then we'll go into Wednesday. So Wednesday we had Bad News Bears, forfeit win over SKDC, nothing crazy there. Extra Salt 2-0 over Oceanus. Eclipse 2-0'd Watch This, don't watch this, in quotes. All right, then we have RBG 2-0 over Secret Club, and then on Thursday we had Eclipse 2-0 SKDC. And then the Cash Cup was Extra Salt taking that one. So we've got a minute left. We're going to go into our matches to watch. Jeff.
Secret Club versus Recon 5. Everything I said about Secret Club, I want to see if they can recover from the wackiness. And Recon 5 is a good team, so that condition is fulfilled, it'll be a good match.
All right, cool. And then Koi?
Mine is definitely going to be GGPR versus Bad News Bears, just because, it's a team that wants to like prove something, GGPR, versus the team that's, coming out of a honeymoon period of sorts with Bad News Bears. They're a little bit more inconsistent right now, but they're still doing really well.
All right, perfect. And then mine is going to be Bad News Bears versus Mythic. This is going to be a good matchup. I think it should be a playoff matchup as well. So I'm just really, it's going to be a fun game to watch. Like those two teams are just fun to watch in general, and it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of come together. I think Bad News Bears takes that one, but with our last 10 seconds, we got match to miss. Watch this versus SKDC.
Sorry guys, we did this every week. We apologize. It's not you, it's us.
It's going to be a relegation matchup. So here we are. We're out of time. Thank you, everybody, for watching this week. We greatly appreciate it. Be sure to tune in next week for more ESEA Premier news. Thank you for watching.
Bye.